Absolutely.
Great. All right, please allow me to record the session. A very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. The rest of the members will join us in progress. My name is Sibeko. I'm the serving PRISA, Chief Executive Officer. This is one of the series that we run. The Global Ethics Day is one of our themed events that we host religiously. We are now on our third, and we're very proud to have you being part of this process and for us to continue rendering these services to members and also having this worthwhile conversation. House rules, we all know. I think I'm not going to teach to the converted. I'm not teaching to the converted. We all know that we're going to keep our mics muted unless we are saying something. And should we want to say something, you can either open your unmute and shout out your name and say what you want to say, or you can raise a hand. Cameras, once we started, we can switch off our cameras to save the bandwidth for those that may be battling a bit. And you're also welcome to send in your chat or your question, using the chat platform. The format of the presentation, we will be guided by Professor Dalien Benecke, who will be the host and the facilitator for this session. A very interesting session and a very interesting month. October is a World Cybersecurity Month, and we are talking cybersecurity on Global Ethics Day. So we'll see how we marry this, and that I will certainly leave in the hands of Professor Rene Benecke. Over to you, Prof. There you go.
The beauty of working from home, you have effects. So my sincerest apologies. You can hear I'm a dog lover. So I have lots of doggies around me. So I will try and keep them quiet, but unfortunately that is not totally in my control. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for that introduction, Vic. I am really honored to actually share with you some thoughts around this very interesting topic. And I'm so glad that we actually have the celebration of cybersecurity, cybercrime, ethics, and reputation all in one basket. So it's surely going to be an interesting afternoon and an interesting hour that we have together. I thought to have a subtitle of taking responsibility. And, you know, with so much being said about vaccinations, what our roles and what our rights are, I very often, are wondering about the balance of the scale in the sense of what is our responsibility, taking it to our responsibility as communicators, how important it is for us to understand the very important role that we have in an organization and what we have as an as the communicators within the organization to ensure that things like cyber attacks, cybercrime, our reputation, and all the other ethical issues that we are the custodians of, that those are in place, that we have a great and a very important role to play with all of these matters. Now, I'm very honored to facilitate this session this afternoon. Just to position myself, for those of you that don't know me that well, you may have seen my face somewhere, but I am a board member of PRISA. I'm also the immediate past president of PRISA, but those are all just titles. That means that I love serving my industry and being involved in my industry. I'm also part of our strategic communication department, the current HOD at the University of Johannesburg. Then we are joined by Mrs. Moremogolo, that being in between, Moremogolo Malebane, Leroke, who is a global transformation specialist and strategist with the Global Transformation University in Tokyo. But she is based in Africa and also the African representative. Then we also have Mr. Harley Marlet. He is the Chief Marketing Officer of Storm Guidance, and which is an international cybersecurity company. And he's all joining us all the way from the UK. And then Ms. Regine Leroux, who is from Reputation Matters. She's joining us from the Cape. And then we have some of our members that's joining us from Botswana and all our other member countries like Eswatini and so forth. So I thought to just set the scene for us this afternoon by sharing a few thoughts of this very topical matter. And as you can see, Moremogolo's presentation will be presented shortly. But just as a teaser almost to the afternoon and some of the discussions that we are going to have, the following thoughts came to mind when I prepared for this session. You know, we very often don't hear about crime and cybersecurity until it hits the news. Now, we've seen some horrific things within our own country, where many state-owned departments have been actually targeted, such as Transnet lately, the port which affected our ports, which then also reminded me of the attack that our North American guys experienced earlier on in the year with a massive ransom demand placed on it. So, but very often we don't hear about these things until it hits the news. So that's one thing that worries me, because if it is such a important and cumbersome reality in our business world, why are we not hearing about it more frequently? So today we want to look at how to start the conversation for us as public relations and strategic communicators and members of PRISA. What is our role and responsibility, as I alerted to earlier on, around this very important topic? Things such as, what is cybercrime? How prevalent is it? How do we prepare our organizations for this risk? How do we actually determine what the risk is? Or what are the processes that we go through? What is the role then of the individual and our, us as professionals, as well as our colleagues and our fellow employees? The governance and reputation matters that we need to put in place in our organizations. So we also plan to end the day off with some very important information and future actions that we would like to take. So that's just a few words from me as an introduction. I'm going to hand over to Moremogolo, who's going to share with us her experience and her wisdom around crime and cybercrime and how it affects us in the global south. Thank you, Moremogolo.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much. Sorry that my picture is not showing. I hope that everyone is able to hear me. And I'm going to share my screen. But before, whilst I'm preparing to share my screen, I'm just saying you really just touched on it. And what you have told us is the challenges that are facing the world today. And so cybercrime is not unique to South Africa. It is not unique to Suriname in South America. It is not unique to Mona Motapa in Harare, Zimbabwe. It is not unique to Sabajaya in Malaysia. Cybercrime is a global phenomenon. I was just talking to a friend the other day saying that, you know what, this is another pandemic. And so we have arrived here with a new technology since its invention. As soon as the internet was born, other small babies were also born. And so what exactly is cybercrime? Like I was saying, another pandemic. And I don't like to go slide my slides, but the amount of data that we are now producing have managed to have the cyber criminals to be working 24/7, 365 days a year. We are the data subjects. We are creating data, and this data is therefore connected through the Internet of Things. You know, you always hear Internet of Things, the interconnectedness via the Internet of all the computing devices. I remember when I was in Japan, I was able to, I have an app on my phone. I was able to scan the ISBN numbers or the identity numbers or the barcode numbers of items in my fridge. And this particular app will tell me, replace your yogurt, replace your bananas are getting old, etc., etc. So the crime that is connected to the internet is called cybercrime. It is a computer system where the computer itself is the victim. In other words, everything takes place inside this beautiful gadgets with a beautiful screen. We're now using them right now. Assuming we're all sitting here, and as we are sitting in this webinar, somebody is sitting and watching and looking at what we're doing. Somebody is looking at my presentation, cyber criminal, or somebody who just wants to empower themselves about this because we send it online. We create this traffic. And when we create this traffic, it's available for everyone to share. And I always say, yes, it is possible because we are living on www. And I break it down to my undergraduate students and master students to say www means a lot. It means the world wide web. And Professor Keaton from Sydney in Melbourne, Australia, was saying it is like a spy web. Everything really is connected. Participants who are joining us today, thank you so much for attending this session. And thank you to PRISA. Thank you, Prof, for that beautiful introduction. And thank you for pronouncing my name so well. I welcome everyone else who's here. It is the time that you've taken in this part of the world is our lunch time in Africa. Elsewhere, they're waking up, others are sleeping. But others are waking up whilst others are sleeping. The cyber criminals are awake. So there is a challenge now. Security issues are glaring us in the eye. They're facing the global village today, and no one is immune. What is happening to where part of my fellow presenters are coming from is exactly what is happening right now in Oslo, Norway. What is concerning us about use of these technologies is exactly the concern in Suriname. I don't know why I like Suriname because I've got friends there. But the concerns of cybercrime are not more than in any other places, especially when you take it in the context, understanding the context that it is www, the world wide web. So the internet, a beautiful thing. I mean, hello, we can check the weather before we travel. You know, I can look at, if I don't know how to prepare lasagna, I could look at on YouTube and check out how to prepare lasagna. If I don't know how to put on my makeup, I can just go online and I can learn how to have, like the girls will say, how to have your eyebrows on fleek, as it were. So as good as it is, the internet and its related companions, I like to call it, you know, your Facebook, your Twitter, your YouTube, your TikTok, your Periscope, they are because these are companies like Pepsi Cola and Coca-Cola. There are different companies which are designing apps each and every day. So the internet, good as it is, have found its place and time amongst the lives of the criminals and has found its space and time amongst our own lives. I mean, how dependent are we on the internet right now? I mean, we see ourselves walking around in the streets. I saw in Beijing where people look like blind men holding a walking stick, you know, because everybody is online. Inside the underground train in the UK, I was looking at people who are not even able to look at each other or just even admire, look at the beauty of how clean River Thames was. And this is because we are now living on the internet. Some will say we are netizens. We are people who are citizens of the internet. And so perhaps we are not even any more different from Sophia. Sophia is this robot which was designed, a human robot, which the UIA even gave a diplomatic passport or a passport. But Sophia, the robot, is now a citizen of the UIE. So we are citizens of the internet. So now today, more than ever before, we are on the internet. So it means that when we are on the internet, we are generating a lot of data. So whenever you hear big data, it's just a number of data, many numbers of data. This data is therefore used in many, 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 many ways. Call it psychographic profiling, call it whatever. But this data, it could be used for example, for improving the stretch and the spread of the COVID-19 vaccine. This information can be used, for example, to look at whether or not vaccine A works more. According to medical anthropology, would this vaccine work with people whose dietary patterns, for example, are the technology as it has arrived, and as we use it, and the amount of data that we're producing. Oh, I must not forget to mention that the amount of time we spend online, whenever we see cybercrime or hear of cyber hacking, whatever, we always see somebody wearing a hat, hiding their faces. We all have seen that picture. Whenever they talk about hacking and cybercrime, you'd see that, showing you that somebody is either in front of the computer with a mask because they know that our computers or his computer also has got a screen. And so the cyber criminals, they too have been caught, because if he doesn't wear the balaclava in our language in South Africa, he will be discovered, and you know how we trace the foot where you are, which URL you are sitting at, etc., etc., etc. So with that context, I'm saying no one of us is immune from cyber crime, and there are many types of crimes that take place on the internet, and we're not going to reduce it to taking them ABC, but there are crimes against persons. You know your hate speech, your stalking, the fake profiles, that crime against states, nation states, we know very well. I'm sure we cannot forget the Panama Leak papers, where 11.5 million of very important information was encrypted. And I'm sure, unless we have forgotten, we can remember what happened during the spring, when social media came into the forefront of communication, where the Arab Spring set the light to what can tweet, what can trend, etc., etc. And I'm sure we can remember Edward Snowden, who himself was working for this very important organization and who leaked this information. What am I saying? I'm saying that because the computers are created by individuals and by persons, it is also possible that they can hack what we hack. So cyber criminals are right there. Which one came first? Well, crime is human nature. It's part of human nature. I mean, down the streets in Lewisham, Southeast London, we know. You go down to New York, past the Big Apple, the other side, you hear somebody was marked. These stories of crime are all over the world. So crime is not unique to the internet. I put it to you that crime is part of human nature. And I'm saying, my argument is crime exists whether there's access to the internet or not. What is interesting is that now the internet is on speed. Sometimes you hear people in the fourth industrial revolution, and we're thinking about how many revolutions we have gone through and how many revolutions we have seen. And so 4IR, normally when I break it down to my students, I always say 4IR, or the fourth industrial revolution, simply in simple terms means speed. SPEED, the speed of doing things. You no longer have to leave your house in Lilongwe in Malawi to go see a doctor. They do telemedicine. You no longer have to go and go to take a lot or any other place to order an item. You go online and you order. They even bring, in Beijing, for example, I used to worry about that though. In Beijing, they'll even bring you fresh meat. Not that there's nothing wrong with having fresh meat delivered to your door in Tokyo, Japan, for example. So crime, whether it's crime on the internet or crime off the internet, has always been. What is happening is the hurricane speed, and how like a meteor, it is spreading so fast because technology is moving faster than the speed of light. And we are in this traffic. Sometimes I hear people saying it is traffic. Of course it is traffic. I mean, when you look at the pictures, when you look at how the robots on our traffic are connected to your phone, how your iPhone is connected to your iWatch, and your iWatch is connected to your microwave. Just the other day, I was posting on my Facebook page a vacuum cleaner that can fit inside one's handbag. and our university in Tokyo is sharing a blog with Elon Musk. So we had a conversation with Elon Musk about 2 months ago, Elon Musk is designing spacecraft, that he himself is not going to space yet. So we were having a conversation, and we were saying, technology, Elon Musk is now the richest man in the world, they say. Well, not that doesn't matter, but he is also in the industry of the new technology, and he's taking instruments and equipment to space. And I was saying, what is the risk? What is the risk of your traffic on the satellite footprint? So, you can talk about your Panama leak papers or whatever, but like Prof was saying when he began, data leaks, part of cybercrime. And here in South Africa, haven't we heard of them? Didn't we see of a video that was sent across of one former minister who lost his job? Didn't we hear of a judge in Cape Town who said some not very common things about the black people in South Africa and their relations with the children, etc. I mean, this judge says, it's common sense, it's common knowledge that before her courts, most of the cases that come before her courts are between uncles and nieces, and uncles and nieces are doing something that I cannot mention here because I respect my culture. But she lost her job. Who can forget who was sitting in the balcony of an estate company that she was working for, who looks at black people on the beach, and she says, these baboons have come to make our beaches very dirty. It was this traffic online, and luckily for her, I don't think she could stand it anymore, whether she had other related illnesses, but she passed away a few years ago. Who can forget these kind of conversations where we saw very important persons being trouble with the traffic that they're producing on the internet? Who can forget that every day in the news, especially in South Africa, we hear news leaked to this news house, news leaked to this news house, news leaked to this news house. I mean, who can forget how even in the UK, the Duchess, who's now moved to Canada, the most beautiful girl, I just love her face, who's married to the prince, or the son and grandson, I love the queen too. She was harassed online. That is also part of a crime that takes place online. Who can forget the video, as I was saying, of this very important man who was in parliament that went trending, and the rest is history. I mean, so many examples are showing that there's a lot of leakages. I mean, we don't even have to go to Panama Papers, but when something needs to be done, and something needs to be done right now, it's leaks and leaks everywhere. So it is time for us now to begin to say, what can we do? What need we do? Because we share www. Are we talking regulation? Are we talking about global response to cybercrime? And are we talking about global response to cybercrime insurance? Those kind of things. What are we as a nation saying? I'm interested to hear what my other co-presenters will be saying, will be presenting when I'm looking forward to that. But ultimately, what we are requiring is to be abreast with technology that advances and to have our people empowered as the technology is moving faster than the speed of light. We need to have, therefore, infrastructure. You may find you are sitting in an office, but your antivirus is way out of date, way out of line. It is it's long past its expiry dates. And I can speak about this because I've been to all the continents of the world, and I therefore know that if there's a problem with data leaks or infrastructure, this phenomenon is not unique to Africa alone. So therefore, countries across the world must be able to make sure that 24/7, they too behave quote unquote like cyber criminals. They too, they too must run the race. They too must keep abreast with infrastructure. You cannot load new information on old infrastructure where your information or your data is going to be exposed. So the responsibility, anyway, we say we have the right to say stop, not now, not anymore. So when we spend time online ourselves as persons, what are we doing? And where are we going? Are we clicking at the right places where we should be clicking? And how do we know these are legitimate? Therefore, the responsibility lies with those in power and position and in government to make sure that ICT education and knowledge is accessible to all, so that when they click send or they click share and tag, they are aware what a tag means and they are aware what a lead means. If one person has 5,000 friends or 1 million followers on Facebook, how does that take the data that was leaked, for example, from one of our banks in South Africa? So it is really, at the end of the day, the responsibility of governments, because we are citizens of this country, and the governments of the day have a right for them to protect us. But the one who clicks send is also responsible, the end user. And the amount of time you spend online is like reading a book back to back with a cyber criminal behind your screen. So ultimately, we need to have a long-term vision. We need to move. We need to have immediate impacts, immediate technology available, and we have to have long-term impacts. What are we going to do to fight cybercrime in South Africa? What are we going to do to fight cybercrime globally? I like to say we cannot talk about South Africa alone because we are on World Wide Web. I have no idea right now where some of the fellow presenters are joining us from or presenting from. But because we are on the World Wide Web, we therefore know. Dalien, I see your hand is up. Is my time up?
Yes, Peter. No, I was actually applauding you, your last statement, but yes, your time is almost up. If you can conclude for us, please, Moremogolo.
I'm going to do that. Thank you, Prof. I'm going to do that. So, responsibility of governments, and also that means inside every office, Prof. Benecke and the rest of the team members and the rest of the participants here, inside every single office, there must be 1 or 2 persons who are responsible for data. Therefore, when they are saying that the technology is going to take away people's jobs, I'm saying no. In fact, it is creating jobs. You know, where we took 100 days or so, I used to go in Spain on holiday when I was studying in Norway. We used to go summer jobs and pick grapes and whatever on holiday in Spain and Italy, where we were picking grapes with our hands, where we are picking potatoes or peaches from the farms here in South Africa. Now machines are doing it. It means that you can fill 1,000 bags in 30 minutes because of the new technology. So we therefore have it in us to keep up with the technology, lest we find that all of us, some people will say the emperor has got no clothes. So it is important for us to have an inclusive approach when we're talking about cybercrime and cybersecurity issues. But we cannot say to people, oh, why did she send it, when they don't know really what to share and to click mean. When you say, no, you are guilty of a chain of publication. Oh, what do you mean by that, ma'am? When you are guilty, but when you are found guilty of a chain of publication according to social media law, is when somebody posts something, share and you share and you share and you share. If that thing is deadly or unwanted online, you are, according to social media law, you'll be charged with what is called, you are guilty of being in the chain of publicizing messages that could be really, really bad. So I'm going to summarize shortly by just saying the responsibility at the end of the day lies with our governments, but it is not my government who's sitting with me when I'm 9 hours on Periscope and 10 hours on Facebook. We are giving the cyber criminal a lot of information. We are posting, we are screenshotting our bank cards, we're sending our PIN number via the internet ourselves as well. The data that we are sending out, we are responsible for the amount of data that is now on the super internet highway. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. I hope that it was of benefit. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you so much, Moremogolo. The next person, and I don't want us to necessarily reflect now already, but rather let's reflect when we've concluded everybody's presentations. And by the way, apart from all the people that we welcomed in the chat, I would also like to acknowledge Solly, one of our previous presidents. Solly, all the way from Sweden, joining us, so welcome. We are really a global platform and global audience this afternoon. Thank you, Solly. Lovely to
Switzerland, not Switzerland. Thank you.
Sorry, I had my geographical positioning wrong. My GPS didn't work well. Welcome, Sophie. Thank you for joining us. Excellent. So next on the program, we have Harley from Storm Guidance, as mentioned earlier on. Harley, we're going to go straight over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Nice to meet everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk on what is one of my favorite subject matters. Maybe I'll just start off with a bit of an introduction on who I am. My name's Harley. I'm the CMO of Storm Guidance. Before working at Storm, I was a founder of an early stage startup, a fintech startup based in London. I was the technical founder at first, and then eventually I became the CEO. The reason why I'm mentioning that is this previous business was dealt largely with transaction data, which is considered quite a valuable asset to attackers and businesses themselves. So we were highly regulated. And through this business is actually how I met the CEO of Storm Guidance, Neil Harebrand. Before that business, I was a developer for 8 years. So I'm familiar with Python, Django, Docker, AWS. And throughout my working in this startup, and after I exited and sold the business, I was working with Neil to develop a number of the products that we provide before joining full-time to launch and market some of the products that we've got under our services. And enough about me, maybe I'll tell you a bit about Storm Guidance. Storm Guidance deals almost exclusively with addressing cyber risk. Our mantra is assess, plan, and respond. We have a number of services that we use to assess cyber risk within organizations, plan for the worst happening, and our core business is in incident response, dealing with issues when they arise. We do that through 2 services. One's called Resecure and the other's called Cybercare. Resecure works with insurers and Cybercare works directly with SMEs. So without further ado, time to dive into the topic of how cybercrime has gotten so bad. And thank you so much for that introduction earlier about the definition of cybercrime, because it actually has teed me up perfectly to get a bit into the nitty-gritty of how this has kind of gotten out of hand. So how bad is it? Well, the World Economic Forum has ranked cybercrime as the 4th clear and present danger internationally. That's only superseded by environmental factors and COVID. So it's a pretty serious issue. And throughout actually COVID, now that we're on the subject, cybercrime has grown exponentially. So that many believe that's the result of people starting to work from home. Attackers have a much wider opportunity to attack these businesses. The business's digital estate, we say, is larger. And by that, we mean there's more opportunity for the attackers to perpetrate phishing scams, emailing scams, because not everyone's in the office. But also there's a larger number of home networks which provide the opportunity to break in. So COVID, it's gotten much worse. Cybercrime's gotten much worse throughout COVID. But actually, to be honest, we were beginning to see the onset of cybercrime growing exponentially even before COVID. And the reasons for that is really we had all the ingredients that allow criminals to act with basically impunity. So I'll talk about 2, but there are many, actually there are 3. I'll talk about 3 core pillars. The first is justice systems are completely incapable of dealing with this cross-jurisdictional problem. So, if you're in South Africa and you suffer a breach, the local police force will not be able to arrest someone in Afghanistan for that crime. So it really is a crime that you can get away with. And it's also a crime that pays. With the introduction of and the popularity of cryptocurrencies, it makes it very easy to deliver a ransom and get away financially with that completely untraceably. And then, so talk about the 3rd pillar. The 3rd pillar, sorry, I've forgotten the 3rd pillar. Okay, just 2 pillars for now. Sorry about that. I knew I should have stuck with 2. Anyway, so like I was saying, cross-jurisdictional problem, financially you can get away with it, cryptocurrencies, and the pandemic, of course. So it's getting really bad. So that's that half of the problem, the ingredients for this becoming a serious problem. And then we can also talk about how it's a technical issue, or people perceive it as a technical issue. Cybersecurity is can be quite complex and costly. I think people do generally like to bury their head in the sands a bit, and they kind of avoid the problem and palm it off to the IT department. And the real problem is that when an incident does happen, this is kind of the sad part about it, that businesses really have very few places they can turn. If you're a business that gets hit by a cybercrime, you can turn to the police. They will give you a crime reference number, but they're not really responsible for resecuring your business and getting you back on your feet. They can really do very little to support you. But anyway, that sets the stage for the problem. Now, those are some ingredients, but maybe I should move on to a bit of the structure on organized crime. By the way, I've got the chat box open. If anyone has any questions, jump in. But people like to perceive on the structure of organized crime or cybercrime, people like to perceive this as a crime that's perpetrated by people in a basement with their hoodies up and lots of code on a screen. But really, it's actually an ecosystem. It's basically like a business vertical. And with that vertical, you have services and providers for all kinds of things. The very root, the very foundational component of this are access brokers. Access brokers sort of find vulnerabilities in organizations and essentially if you use them to perpetrate their crimes, if they're in a full stack organized crime or criminal organization, or they acquire the vulnerability, they verify it, and then they sell it online. And it's not uncommon to see on the dark web credentials and credentials to break into businesses that these access brokers are providing essentially as a service. And then, of course, you've got the attackers. The attackers can be an individual or organized criminals. And under the category of organized criminals, we've got state actors or maybe traditional organized crimes like the mafia. And they perform the malicious activities. And what they'll generally do is they will deploy an attack. Right now, the most popular form of an attack is ransomware. These attackers don't develop the ransomware. Actually, there are ransomware providers who provide ransomware as a service. So all of these actors, all of these components in this sort of vertical act completely independently. Or they, you might work, if you're a criminal, you might work for a full stack attacking organization, but it's really, picture it as if it's a business vertical. I see a question in the chat. Is there a priority list for attacks? Can you clarify that for me, actually? Do you mean, is there something that attackers look for, or certain sectors that businesses go for? If it's either of those, I'll come to this shortly, but just clarify in the chat, I'll come back to that question. Actually, you know what, I'll come on now. I've got my notes in front of me, and that's the next section. So how do attackers pick their targets? So firstly, if you're an effective attacker, you're going to scan for vulnerabilities at scale. Criminals are opportunists. They'll sort of look for easy wins and low-hanging fruit. And if you've got some technical proficiency, you can build scripts to identify vulnerabilities at scale. And what they'll sort of look for is vulnerabilities along certain sort of verticals, certain areas. Initially, they'll start by doing a drive-by the full digital estate. They'll look around vulnerabilities on your websites, your email servers, application servers. They'll look for your remote access portals, CCTV systems, and even in some cases, building management systems. When you act as a hacker, you really sort of think outside of the box. There's generally multiple ways to get into these businesses. And you're really just looking for the easiest way in. So while doing that drive-by, you'll probably be looking for signs of low digital investment. If you're see indicators that there's a stretched IT team, maybe there's the technical stack is too wide and far-reaching to be serviced by a company of this certain size, or you see something that looks like there might be an opportunity here, then you might choose that as a target to investigate further. Generally, the rule of thumb is it's not a matter of if they'll get in, it's a matter of when. So given enough time, to invest in certain businesses will eventually get in. And there's to give you an idea of the other vectors, you can research individuals or use company information, which is sort of the information used for phishing. The humans will always sort of be the weakest link in the chain, so you try and figure out ways to talk you in to get access to something that you shouldn't. You'll also look for misconfigured services. These are very easy to identify. In fact, most businesses haven't configured things like DKIM or SPF, secure mail sending functionalities that prevent people from impersonating you online. And then, if you work your way through this list, eventually you'll probably end up somewhere by thinking to yourself, well, I really want to get into this business. And then you'll go and look for previously breached data online. So maybe there's an access broker that already has access to this business. Maybe this business has suffered a breach before, and you can get some information that you can dig into a little further. And if that isn't the case, maybe the employees have been part of a previous breach. You can go onto LinkedIn, you can identify all the employees, you can identify their personal emails through LinkedIn, pass that through a breach database and identify what breaches they've been in. And then at that stage, you're looking for employees that have been in multiple breaches, where you can see the passwords and you can see matching passwords. Odds are they haven't changed that password, and you use that password to get in. Our general saying for now is that passwords are essentially dead, but I'll talk about that a bit later. When it comes to attackers picking a vertical, or are there certain industries that attackers like to choose? There absolutely are. If you're a criminal organization and you have a bit of success along a certain vertical, those tactics or techniques might work again on other verticals. We've recently seen, there are two interesting ones that I'll share with you. Firstly, lawyers or legal firms are highly targeted. We've seen a very sophisticated, they call it a watering hole attack. Essentially, the organized criminals are ranking niche legal terms on Google on websites that look very innocent. In fact, in some instances, they are innocent websites that have been hacked themselves, and they attach these niche pages to existing legitimate websites, explaining the legal term and then instructing the lawyer to download an article, which is essentially a malicious attachment. So that's an interesting point of view. When you think about that, you think about how well organized these criminals are, you can see that they've got lawyers in their team, so they've got legal proficiencies, they've got SEO experts, and they also have the technical diligence to break in and deploy malicious scripts into people's businesses. It's a very well-oiled machine. Another interesting vertical and a little less sophisticated, schools we've seen being highly targeted. Essentially, these sort of scams work as an invoice type fraud, where you get into the school's mailing system, you eventually pivot your way into access to someone from the financial department, and then you send out the school fees payment request to the parents a week before they're normally sent out, with the request for fraudulent details in there. And if you hit one, if you're good at getting into one school, you could probably deploy the same techniques for other schools. So at this stage, if you're not freaking out, or maybe you are, you're probably thinking to yourself, that's very concerning. But this won't happen to me, or why don't I hear about this more? Why don't I hear about this more? And we hear about it a lot, don't get me wrong, but it's happening a lot more than it's sort of being propagated. And that is because, and then we call it the black swan theory. People sort of think that this is when they get hit, this is unprecedented. There is no way that I could have known this is going to happen to me. But the reality is it is happening to almost everyone in the business community. And businesses will do everything they can to prevent the knowledge of an incident happening getting out. So really where ethics comes into this is if you are a member of the PR department and a business has a breach, there is a responsibility to raise the flag and communicate it, because the business community seems unaware of how, considering how well organized and how well structured everyone is, unaware of how at risk they really are. So when I'm talking about notification, what needs to be done there is actually in South Africa, POPI has just come into effect, which means that you're legally required to report it to the information regulator. They're trying to collect central information on how serious the problem is. So you report it to them. And when it comes to reporting to the information regulator, I suggest that you get, it's not necessary, but I suggest you get some legal advice on reporting effectively. There are fines involved with being having a data breach, and if you report correctly, the information regulator you'll give the appearance that you have everything under control, and they won't look at you significantly further. As part of notifying the information regulator, you also have to notify the affected customers, and that can be difficult. It depends on the type of breach you've had. Identifying specifically, I recommend identifying specifically who was part of the breach, and for that it requires very good data control, understanding what data you have there, but I'll touch on that in a moment. But you need to notify the customers involved, and you should of course consider this, and this is where the ethical arrangement comes in, presenting a very good announcement to the public, maybe getting ahead of the story. But you know, each incident kind of requires its own due diligence on that front. When I was talking earlier about thinking about your data assets and notifying people specifically, and by the way, just drop a message in the chat when my time's up, and I'll wrap it up. But when we're talking about notifying effectively, and what can you do to prepare for an incident, I think the best place to start is thinking about your data assets. What data do you control? What data do you have on your customers? Where is it kept? How sensitive is it? And in what volumes do you have it? Will really be the initial, will be the start of what your kind of, where you can base your digital strategy around. So I would suggest starting with digital assets, and then I'll just wrap up with, and after you've got that asset register, then start considering tactics and how much you should invest in your cybersecurity. And just wrapping up on two measures that, you know, that I could give to everybody here that I know will be valuable if you implement it. If you don't use any services that don't have the second factor of authentication involved with them, like I said, passwords are dead. Use a second factor authentication tool like Google Authenticator. If the service doesn't provide 2FA, don't use it. That's our policy at Storm Guidance. And secondarily, offsite or air-gapped backups. You'll thank yourself. It's a special type of hell when you've had an incident and you've got no backups and you've got no choice but to pay around them. And you don't want to be in that position. Anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk on this subject. I really appreciate it. Over to you guys.
Yeah, Harley, I have a million questions for you. And I know our time does not allow that. And it's really, while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, this is such a complex matter, which we need to unpack a lot more. So I'm sorry that we don't have much, you know, all afternoon as yet, but this is really just a tongue-twisting, mind-boggling exploration at this stage as to what and how complex and where we all fit in. So it will be the first of many to come. The next speaker we asked to join us is then our own Regine Leroux from Reputation Matters, to just put the context of strategic communication into this mix as to the responsibilities then that that we have as an individual communicator, advising our organization, but also playing an active role in developing a better understanding of the complexities around cybersecurity. So over to you, Regine. Thank you for joining us. I know it's been a hectic day so far.
Thank you so much, Prof. Appreciate that, and good afternoon, everyone. I just want to put in a little disclaimer right up front. I'm by no means a cybersecurity specialist. What I do know is reputation management and the basics behind that. So I think that's also where the link comes in with when your organization is under threat from a cyber point of view, your reputation, the management of that is absolutely crucial. And I think it's taking your crisis communication to the next level, of putting that on steroids. It's not just having another crisis comms in place, and it's part of all of this is to tie it all together from everything that was part of the discussion today, is looking at it from a governance point of view to make sure that we have the due diligences in place. But apart from all of that, it's to make sure that it's not just the IT guy's problem anymore, that it is actually the whole organization, but it has to be at a strategic level as well. The IT person needs to be at board level, as does the communicator. And when putting together that risk management assessment, putting together that crisis communication, developing it, is to also find ways of how do we translate that cyberspace jargon. I mean, it's a total study on its own that we need to take into consideration. And as communicators, how do we communicate that in a way that people can understand it? Because otherwise it is just going to become the IT person's problem. And we need to look at internal training, which is absolutely vital. And as Harley said earlier, with the POPI Act that is in place, it is our responsibility as well now, and that's also where the ethics comes in, to be transparent about these things for a number of reasons. First of all, is we by law now, by this act, we need to disclaim, we need to put it out there. We need to report if there's been a cyber attack with the organization. And again, the best is to get legal advice around that. But part of that as well is that we learn from each other. I mean, it's new, but it's not new, but it's continuously changing. That we do have a base of case studies to tap into, best case scenarios, benchmarkings. What do we do? How do we do it? And then having that communication in place from an internal point of view, and then most importantly, how do we communicate that externally? But at the same time, and with any reputational issue, of which obviously the cybersecurity is a massive issue, ethics in itself is a massive issue, we need to be proactive. When that pawpaw has hit the fan, when everything has been hacked, it's too late. We need to be proactive in terms of how do we put protocols in place? What does due diligence mean? And it means to have those discussions around the table, unpacking it into as much detail as possible and playing out the various scenarios. If this happens, what's the course of action that we need to take? Who's going to communicate what to whom? If our systems have been compromised, what are the alternatives? How are we going to get those messages out? Who is going to be responsible for what? So it is really, as Prof said, quite, I mean, we're touching the tip of the iceberg here, and it is a discussion that can take a whole day just to get started with, that we need to unpack in a lot more detail. But I think the main thing is as well that we need to take into consideration from the cybersecurity point of view, and when you're putting your plans and strategies together, is also to have a look at the succession planning of all of this, just to keep that in mind. We're seeing a big part of that playing a role when it comes to internal communications. So I know that we are a little bit limited for time. I'm very happy to answer any questions that there might be, and I think again, very broadly had to touch on all of these things, but I think as long as everybody has it on their radar to prioritize it, to bring it into the communication strategies, the plans, to get that voice around the boardroom table as well, that's really key. Sorry, I love what you've said here.
Yes.
Sorry, go for it.
No, that's fine. I think we need one of those ping buttons online for indication as to when we want to speak. Regine, that was. Have you wrapped up, or did I interrupt you?
No. I've tried to go through all my points as quickly as possible because I am so mindful of everybody's time.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to actually put a question to you, Regine. Have you come across any of your clients that are and in this space already thinking about this? And have you approached any of your clients around?
I'm touching wood everywhere now, Prof, that we've not had to deal with anything like this, but it most certainly is on the radar in terms of seeing it more and more with corporates being hacked. What do you do? I mean, we see all these large corporates, but it's everybody that has a risk of running that we are faced with. So, and it is seeing how are we proactively managing this, because I think, when you do a crisis strategy or crisis comm strategy, you want to have all worst case scenarios out there, but you need to also just first and foremost have something in place. So no, we haven't yet. I don't want to say yet, we haven't.
Well, good for you. I think there are many people that are not so lucky and not feeling that positive approach that you have at the moment. May we then open the floor for some questions? I have some questions obviously up my sleeve, but that's just the nature of who I am. So if anybody else has a question, I agree with what you are saying, Solly. It's all about prevention and smart issue management. Yeah, so true what you are saying, Solly. One cannot be more effective and proactive in your planning. Any other questions or any questions from anybody? You can either or open your mic. Solly?
Yeah, thank you. Hi. I think it'd be interesting to have a discussion also about what kind of skills, as the world of business and organizational management changes and evolves, the skills that PR and communication people need to effectively serve their clients evolve as well. I mean, I still find people in the industry who still talk as if we're still in 1975 or 1980. So what kind of skills do PR and communication management, especially reputation managers, need today, faced with the kind of challenges that you guys are discussing here today? I mean, all PR training is not sufficient. You also need to know how to integrate digitally and to be there when you need to be there for your clients.
Absolutely brilliant point, Solly, because I think there we can really look at recent research that we did with Capability Framework in South Africa. We were a group of about five academics that did a pilot study around the Global Alliance's Capability Framework. And one of the key findings in that was, came from senior leaders and academic leaders, all identifying the need of making sure that we have a technical proficiency and competence. So that is surely one of the big focus points for us at PRISA in the future.
Right. Okay.
Very good point. But this is just that extra niche. It's almost, yes, we need the basic know-how as to how to deal with technology, with digital comms, all of that. But bigger than that, for me, is the opportunity here to bring in the better collaboration with other departments within.
Right.
How we've struggled with that all the years. Bringing in really an integrated approach to something specific, such as cybersecurity.
Yeah, just a last point. I mean, we in the past, it's always been very good for PR communications people to know how to work with legal minds, because sometimes there are situations where the lawyers or the legal advisors will say, don't say anything, and the PR people will say, but you need to say something. And now we have to work with digital people, digitally trained people, but we also have to have those basic skills ourselves so that you don't have to always be asking for stuff that you can do yourself.
Yeah, No, so true. And that brings me to the responsibility of the individual. As I spoke to Harley earlier on, he actually mentioned quite a interesting, and I had to say a very interesting point, mentioning that, you know, very often, and we all know that we have the dark side of public relations very much with us.
Right.
Well, and it's not that we are negating it, it is something that we need to manage. So, you know, the dark side of PR is often that we are cover-ups and cover up on such crime activities, and
Right.
don't want to risk coming out in the open and actually acknowledging that that our company was not up to speed. So the issue there is how do we practice good ethical communication, which adds to the content and to the agenda. Thank you for that, Solly.
Okay.
Moremogolo, you have your hand up. You're on mute, love.
I have a question to Ndade Solly. Thank you so much, Ndade Moeng.
Yes.
It's not a question, it's just a comment to say, indeed, there are required skills right now. Indeed, our organization, PRISA, of which I'm proud to be a member of, is about imaging and branding and positioning South Africa. I always think PRISA is like brand SA for me, you know. So, but brand SA in the communication platform. Yeah. So what we need for communicators is training, digital PR, digital marketing, digital sending of messages. Now the PR hard copies must become PR soft copies. It also means that inside PRISA, we need data scientists. We need people who are available to do business data analytics. So the skills that we have already at PRISA, perhaps now PRISA must begin to train them now on going PR the digital way, because let's face it, social media and all the technologies have a great impact on public relations. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you so much, Moremogolo. That is spot on. And, you know, you're opening the floor for us to look at how do we not only develop literacy for our own membership and for within the profession itself, but also develop that literacy within our organizations. So I think that's part of the development that we can really look at in the future, and really becoming that advisor that we are supposed to be in our organization, not the react on instructions from management on what we need to communicate, but actually setting the scene of what needs to be communicated. Moremogolo, I've got a question for you, if it's okay, if I can ask you a question about your presentation. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You mentioned quite a number of examples, local examples, which I love, because it is important that we position this, you know, in our own local context, and to make, you know, to make it real to all of us here. You mentioned quite a number of you know, leaks with prominent people. What would you say is the motivation for that? I'm always interested to understand why would people, such as a cyber attacker, why would they, is it only financial? And in the case of these prominent people that were, had their information compromised, do you think it would be also the same, financial? And if so, who would be paying for that?
Exactly. Thank you, Prof. What a beautiful question. Data is for sale, just like any other garment now in the local store. So when I was talking earlier, and I was talking about psychographic profiling. In other words, they're looking at what we're doing online and they're dangling the carrot, as it were. So it could be anyone. It could be out of hate. You know, we've got people saying hate speech. It could be nation states wanting to steal other nation states' documents. I mean, what was Edward Snowden doing, leaking documents from NASA? Why was he leaking such critical information, having worked for the CIA, for example? Why was it important for someone to leak Eduardo's documents, the so-called Panama leaks? 1.5 million documents were very private documents. So it could be political. Right now, thank you, Prof, for that question, because right now, during the time of elections, everybody is just scraping for information about other people, which is not even true at times. And so it become a war zone. So there are many reasons. But most importantly, sometimes it's just to destabilize, to manipulate, sometimes to sell, sometimes to influence, or for decision processes, or for example, for your competitors with very different objectives. Sometimes these attacks are sponsors. You pay someone. You can pay somebody. You remember the story in the US, many people were paid to vote, and fake followers and fake whatever. So sometimes it's to sponsor. It is because what you are leaking is being sponsored by somebody there with their own whatever issues, and this increases security budgets that they go sky with certain benefits out of that. But sometimes these ones who do the leaks directly benefit, and only God. I mean, if I say to you, Prof, I've got a headache, you cannot tell me I don't have it. You know, you give me the tablets for, you give me Panadol or aspirin because I told you I've got a headache. So sometimes the benefits and the reasons why are only known to a person whose headache, you know whether it exists or not. And sometimes to enrich themselves. Sometimes it's for internet storage, because this data will eventually become for sale. It's for storing. It's for the ones who are designing the infrastructure. It's take advantage of that industry by spying on the internet. It could be many reasons, Prof. And so I hope that I've answered that question. It's like data is really for sale. It's an item, you know. We were saying make money. It is the mint machine that makes money. We earn the money. But data, we make the data. We make the data. We create the data. And it is the people who know and why who then make this data available to whomsoever may want it. Thank you, Prof.
Excellent. You know, I love crime stories, and when my children heard that I'm involved with this session this afternoon, they laughed at me. They said, yes, now all your CSI, cyber CSI and all of those programs that you love watching will come in handy. But, you know, this is it's not Hollywood and it's not a series, it is real life. You know, what you said, Regine, as well, reminded me of the importance that we have or the important role that we have in ensuring that there's a good governance within our organizations, and then that we have necessary strategies in place. Now, I wanted to ask Harley, and if there's anybody else with a question, you're most welcome to put up your hand or just type it for us. But in the meantime, Harley, I just wanted to find out from your side, what are some, say, 2 to 3 key points that, in your opinion, we as communicators should focus on in advising our clients and our companies?
Sure. So when it comes to, in my opinion, what a good PR notification looks like, I think it's really important to be genuine, consistent with your facts and your reporting, and revealing the facts only on a need-to-know basis, because the situation can change, and you don't want to set up rumors by changing the story or the narrative halfway through. And I think most importantly, it's about showing good leadership and demonstrating that you've prepared for this type of incident. If you know, the best type of response will be the one that you prepare for. And if you can show that or give the appearance that you have everything under control, even though it is a very intense and it's a crisis, showing a cool head, reporting very concisely will, in my opinion, help you get ahead of bad press or speculation. I think there's also a lot of opportunity to be a leader in regards to reporting and providing transparency and openness. But I'm really happy to have, if anyone wants to pipe in, have a conversation around that and see if there are any other thoughts in the group.
Excellent. Thanks, Harley. Vic, I see your hand is up, Victor. Can you unmute?
Oh, yes. I can. I can. A comment and a question. Mr. Moeng raised something very important about us moving forward and positioning ourselves favorably to face the current challenges in the industry. And I think having people like Harley with the latest state-of-the-art technology to combat this, from the PRISA side, I know that through PRISA education, training, and research, we're looking at a special program, short learning program, which must bring in all these new skills and expertise, because there's only one way through which we can survive this, is to reskill, upskill, and cross-skill ourselves. So Harley, from your side, maybe you might handle this at the end. What are the immediate fixes or immediate actions that one can take? And where will this responsibility lie? Will it lies within the business continuity and risk component, or the crisis communication? Because when cyber thing happens, it's a crisis. Thank you.
And that's actually, I think that's a great question. I think in regards to skilling up, you know, I worked as a developer in my previous career, and I found that, you know, one of the real issues is the developer community can sometimes hide behind jargon and complications and technicalities, not intentionally, but really I think it comes up from two sides. For PR to understand the technical competencies required to communicate these problems effectively, but also for the IT teams to be able to communicate their requirements better as well. And I think that actually, that sort of within an organization, that should come strategically from a board level. It's not just an IT problem, and communicating crisis is not just a PR problem. If the business has a culture around understanding security, which will help protect that business in the first place, when a crisis occurs, everyone will be able to effectively band together and deal with it. In my opinion, it's the blindsiding, just being completely knocked out and not expecting this at all is the biggest issue here. And you know, I know I sort of always go on about it, but well, I've gone on about it a lot in this talk. It's the asset registries. Just sitting down and understanding what data you have and how valuable that is to your business and what you would do if that data was gone. And that in turn immediately indicates the value to criminals by, you know, seizing that data from you, or you having to notify your customers as a result of breach, etc. That can set the stage for understanding and appreciating that dealing with this, it can be an investment. It is an investment. And so you can proportionally respond and put measures in place. And I think, yeah, it's a matter of upskilling on every domain, led by, strategically led by a well-informed board.
Okay, thank you, Al. Madam President, if I may, just another one would be my last question, I hope so. We all know that there are no boundaries for hackers and scammers. And this happens in many ways through phishing scams and other softwares. Now, for Madame Leroux, Regine, and Mr. President Moeng, we know the extent and the damage that is caused by cybercrime sometimes hits organizations so much. How can organizations deal with the whole issue of reputation? Because the blame may be set squarely in an organization instead of one department. Take, for example, F&B. When they were scammed and so much money was transferred from people's accounts, F&B had to face the music and had to refund the people. And they were blamed, and other people were no longer comfortable in being part of that banking institute. So from the reputation perspective, how do you deal with it? And what would be your advice to organizations regarding this very crucial and critical matter? Thank you.
Thanks, Victor. I think one of the key things when it comes to a crisis as well, it's the blame game can happen so quickly that we're looking for others to blame. And part of that reputational, but also just emotional intelligence is to take accountability. And I think one of the key things that we need to look at as well is we aren't experts at everything. As much as we have to know a lot about, a little bit about a lot of stuff. We need to call in the experts as well. And especially on new topics like cybersecurity, there's no ways that we can know everything. And I think it links very well to what Solly was saying earlier as well. We have to learn new skills, but while we kind of catching our breath, playing catch up with getting on top of this whole cybersecurity thing, we have to get people that are experts on board as well to help us. And then as communicators, that's where we can then help to translate that message into the technical side. We are the translators into making it understandable for the people that we need to work with. So I think that's something that we need to just, it is a process. We need to be patient with the process, but we need to catch up very, very quickly.
Excellent point. Solly, do you want to add anything? Solly still with us? Yes, Solly is still with us. I don't know if your question was also targeting Solly, Vic?
Yes, it was, as a seasoned reputation management specialist.
Sitting in Switzerland. How lucky can you be? While Solly is getting his thoughts right, Moremogolo, you have your hand up?
Yes, Prof. Yes, Prof.
Yes.
Was my because I didn't want to create a dialogue. There are questions that I've already posted on the chat for the various presenters.
We seem to be having challenges with Madame Moremogolo's network, but she says that there are certain questions that she has already placed on the chat. I think we can just go through those and given a chance.
The first question was, if you can hear me, to Harley, why is the internet vulnerable to cyber attacks? And the second question was, kindly share to Harley. The question is, why is the internet vulnerable to cyber attack? The second question is, kindly share with us challenges facing your own country of origin regarding cybercrime and how you have combated it. And the second question, or the third question is it possible to have a unique, what was it? Where's that question? It's on sitting there. Is it possible to have a unique and universal sort of regulatory mechanism for combating cybercrime? I think the questions are on the chat. I can't see them now because I was just typing very fast. Thank you, Harley, and thank you.
Sorry, I didn't see the chat questions in the chat, but I think those are really good questions. So why is the internet vulnerable, or why is this such a rife place for crime? And I think that really heavily has to do with the cross-jurisdictional nature of committing these crimes. You can get away with cybercrime. It's the crime that pays. That genuinely, it's very obvious. You see the headline ransoms coming through the community. For example, Colonial Pipeline, which maybe you've all heard of. It was a $5 million ransom. Interestingly, an interesting note about that is 2.3 million of those dollars were recovered. But like I was saying before, this sector is an ecosystem, so they only recovered 2.3 million. The other millions went to the other corporates that these two decentralized, non-connected services who perpetrated this crime. When the money went through, it was distributed. So that's speculation on how that works. But 5 million is pale in comparison to the 40 million pound ransom that CNA Hardy suffered. They supposedly paid that amount, and the criminals haven't been caught. And really, it's rife because it seems to be a crime that pays, essentially. So I think hopefully answers that question. And you know, it is a real problem, and it can't be really. The nature of the internet really means that you want things connected, because that's, you know, how it works. That's how we all benefit from it. But its biggest strength is also one of its biggest weaknesses. In regards to the UK, what challenges do we face? I think that you know, when an incident occurs, as in its incident responders, what we generally see is a misunderstanding of the skill set required to respond to an incident. You really do need a specialist to come in and perform digital forensics on your systems to really identify how the attack has got in. What we regularly see is because of this misunderstanding, is that many businesses will use either their existing IT service providers who are not trained in this, and who will put focus, or maybe because they're under pressure, put restoring the systems before identifying the issues. And like I said, identifying the issues is a very niche skill. So these, you know, the incumbent provider will restore the systems, and likely by doing so, remove a lot of the evidence that would be necessary to identify what actually happened. And what we have seen before is, as a result of that, within a matter of days, the attackers are right back into those businesses' systems, and they're right back to square one. So it's that to me, I think, is one of the biggest challenges, and that's not just the UK, but that's something that I think international would really help. When it comes to regulation, this is my personal opinion. I think that the regulators have not done enough to really protect businesses from really remedial things, technically, that could prevent a lot of incidents. Now, don't get me wrong. I'll give you an example of what I mean actually first. When you're dealing with ransomware, this software deploys on your system, and it encrypts everything, file after file after file after file. This is a very unusual pattern in regards to your daily use of a computer, and I'm amazed, and we are amazed at Storm Guidance as how this has been. These operating systems are allowed to do this. You know, with more regulation, we might see better implementation of measures or pressure on the providers of operating systems to kind of do something about it. I think the other interesting thing, actually, this is I don't know if this is going too sort of nuanced or technical, but it's very hard for the you know, regulators to say we'll make it illegal to pay ransoms when people are struck by ransoms. But what they can, and you don't really want to be the public figure around saying do not pay the ransoms under any circumstances, and paying ransoms, it can be very, very tempting. But what they can do is they can put a lot of pressure on the exchanges and make it very difficult to buy or purchase or acquire the cryptocurrencies necessary to pay ransoms in a effective and quick way. So that's something, another interesting nuance, how regulators can sort of really make it quite difficult to acquire the means to pay a ransom if that in a rapid way that might put a little pressure on it. But I mean, really, if you're a business that is going to pay a ransom, that makes things very unpleasant for that business itself. But that's again getting a bit. These are my opinions, by the way. That's getting a bit into the weeds. So I hope that answers your question.
I think that was a wonderful answer. Moremogolo?
I think it was, but however, I was saying to a Storm audience, as I looked at your website yesterday, and I wasn't spying or scraping for anything there. What I'm curious to know is, when you do investigate and the nature of the work that you do, how do you make sure that you don't run the risk of also breaching data privacy and security of persons? That's that question, because you do investigate these areas, you investigate risk and you mitigate it. When you do the work that you do, how do you make sure that you guard against not breaching the data privacy, etc.? And then the second question is it possible, now that you are in the UK, my favorite country, and I love students, by the way, I looked at all your profiles, I looked at all your newspaper clippings. I'm really, really happy. I looked at it last night. And apart from the fact that I lived in the UK, at Southeast London, I actually do also love the Queen. But this is not the conversation for today. How is it possible to have a unique and universal definition of cybercrime? I'm asking you now that you are sitting across the world. Is it possible? Is it possible to have a unique and universal definition of cybercrime?
No, in my opinion on that second question, there'd be a unique definition. Oh, sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. On a unique definition, I really think that in my previous company, I worked in the fintech space, financial technology, and I regularly had a sort of, we were a cashback and rewards product, and we joined an accelerator, fintech accelerator, and we had, when I actually got into that accelerator, there were so many different types of businesses there, and things that I didn't traditionally think of fintech. And I kind of accepted that really actually fintech was a word that covers quite a lot of things, and you can kind of fit a lot of products or things into that category. And I genuinely think cybercrime is a bit like that as well. It's the sort of thing where it's moving in shape and moving in quite an interesting way, that what might be a definition of a cybercrime that fits today won't cover something that could arise in the near future. So I'm very hard to pin down on that one, actually. When it comes to data protection, in fact, in GDPR and POPIA, there is actually an exemption for when investigating a crime. Data Protection Act doesn't apply, as far as I'm aware. So you're able to effectively respond to an incident quickly and proficiently without having that concern, i.e. the business can share, for example, a mailbox with us if the mailbox has been compromised, and we can do our job and help identify who needs to be notified, for example, which actually is a really good example, because that's as part of your notification process, you're trying to facilitate your requirements under POPIA by notifying the customers. That's a service that we help business identify who those customers are, so that they can do that.
Excellent. Thank you for those very intriguing questions as well as the responses. Vic, I see your hand is up. I gather it's a previous hand as we need to finish, or do you want to have a last question?
No, it's a legacy hand. Well,
a legacy hand. Legacy. I on purpose didn't say old, because between your gray hair and my gray, we won't go there.
It is an old hand, but I don't want to disturb your wrapping up. But all I can say is that I see that you're going to propose some follow-up actions, and maybe also have Regine share her contact details, so that in case there's anything that we need, we can do so, and Harley the same. But Madam President, please wrap up, and you will give us some action items in order not to turn this into a talk shop, but to make it something that worth engaging in the same way we do with the African Brain Summit, where we share thought leadership and bring about these disruptive conversations purposely in order to shape the future. Over to you, ma'am.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vic. Yes, I know Regine has got another appointment. So Regine, you are most welcome to also share, like Harley, your details in the chat. One of the actions that I picked up in my own, or shortcomings really, that I wanted to propose as a future action is for us to start a think tank from PRISA side around this topic. And as we mentioned earlier on, there's not really a data hub available at this stage as to where and what we can share information, incidences, learn from each other. I loved what you said, Regine, that we need to know a lot about little about a lot of things, still we know a lot about a lot of things. So it's a progressive game, and we need to stretch our own understanding of building our relationships internally and externally with those specialists that we need to work with us on this matter. So the first proposal that apart from us, sharing our contact details, is also to then invite our friends from the rest of Africa that we have here this afternoon to join us in this kind of a workshop into, you know, unpacking the actual nitty-gritty literacy matters, cyber crime literacy matters, a database development, and then a risk, and it links to what Harley said earlier on about, you know, understanding and the asset register and so forth. You know, how many of our organizations has actually done that in terms of the data assets that we have? So do we know which type of organizations, such as, you know, preference, financial institutions, pharmaceutical institutions, who's got the biggest set of data that is the most sensitive and most lucrative to cyber attacks? Because ultimately, and I think that's the message that, that I want to leave us with this afternoon. It's actually an article that I read. It's a 2020 publication of Minds in Minds and Machine, that said, those who live by, there was the saying, those who live by the digit die by the digit. But it actually has also another implications, that those that live by the digit may just be saved by the digit. So in this context, being prepared, being understanding of what may be the consequences or what may be the type of attacks that we can endure, having that kind of awareness, that kind of literacy is, I think, where we need to start. So that's really just a closing thought from my side. I know we went over our time, but I think this is such a topical and such an interesting you know, discussion that we need to spend a lot more time on it. So with a lot, you know, without saying too much more, I would just like to thank Victor for arranging this. Victor, your role in PRISA is always valuable and valued. And then also to our speakers, Harley, that came in at very short notice, Moremogolo, even shorter notice, and Regine and myself. We are always love to you know, engage with you and share some ideas. So thank you to everyone, and for everyone that joined us from all over the world. Looking forward to having more discussions around this. I think this is the start to many. Thank you to all. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Madam President. The session is recorded. It will be downloaded and uploaded to the PRISA YouTube channel. A number of members could not attend. I don't know what the reason, maybe it's the timing, but they've asked for a recording. So we will put it on the PRISA YouTube channel and share it with the members, and share the link with the members. Thank you so much, President Wayne.
Be safe, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Madam President. Thanks, Mpumi.
Thank you.
Thanks, Haratibi.
Thank you. Goodbye,
everyone. Yeah.
Thanks,
Harley.
Good afternoon.
Ali, we'll catch up, and we'll also talk about the consultancies, and we'll share that information with you. Okay.
Absolutely. It's great to see you again, Victor. Have a fantastic day.
Much appreciated.
Bye, everyone.
My leadership.
Say.
Thank you so much. And we will catch up on the flip side and talk about next month. Next month we're doing in fact, two things to talk about. We've got the Africa Brand Summit seminar coming up, monthly webinar coming up, and we also have the research colloquium next month on the 10th. So we'll catch up on the flip side and take it from there.
We can't catch up without telling me entire.
Madam Ailey, Namibia.
My leadership, I was saying, how was the presentation?
It was on point. You set the tone, and you set the tone, and that's what
thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I know we put you on the spotlight. Thanks, leadership.
Thank you, my leadership.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
President Mwe? Oh. President Mwe? President?